Hi everybody, and welcome to the Hall of Muttering. More than just a room where a bunch of drunk dwarves tell each other stories all day, the Hall is one of the ancient repositories of knowledge the Infernal Dwarves founded after the Age of Ruin. So today, with such wisdom in mind, I bring you a battle report between the Highborn Elves and the Infernal Dwarves. I've only played against this player a few times, but he's quickly becoming one of my favorite opponents. He just moved into my area a few months ago and is one of the friendliest people I've had a chance to meet across the tabletop in a while. And for me, that's what this game is really all about. Now, before I get into lists, I want to spend a minute talking about deployment. I am sure the deployment phase is one of the least understood phases of the game, but it's probably the most important one. If you can get your deployment right, you're making your job a whole lot easier. Get it wrong, and you're fighting an uphill battle all game long. Here's a picture of the battlefield before we deployed. We alternated placing pieces of terrain, and what you're looking at are two hills, two ruins, a swamp, and a building. There's also an impassable stone rock formation just off to the left of the picture, but apparently it didn't make it into the picture. Deployment zones were dividing the table diagonally through the middle from the top left to the bottom right, and I got to choose sides. To me, that ruin in the middle was going to be the primary problem because it was right in the middle of the table. And looking at my opponent's list, he had a lot of accurate shooting. Now, generally speaking, I believe the best path to victory is to divide your opponent's forces, and by taking the left side, I was hoping he would have to deal with it instead of me. And hopefully that would put me at least one step ahead. I also had a hill and a building on my side, which would be perfect for hiding my assets behind, since based on the number of deployment drops, my opponent would probably get the first turn. And finally, the hill on the right side would leave my opponent with a tempting place to put his bolt throwers, except it was pretty far away, and by pretty far away, I mean over 48 inches from where I expected the bulk of my forces would go, but still reachable by my War Machine hunters if they went where I wanted them to go. So in their heathen crusades to purify the land, this is how the Highborn Elves deployed. On the left-hand side of the board, my opponent had 2 Seaguard Reapers and a unit of 40 Seaguard tucked between them. Inside the Seaguard is my opponent's mage, and he was carrying the book. Next to that stood a big block of 23 Lion Guard with both the enemy BSB and his general. That general is a beast with strength 7, a good armor save, a good ward save. I think he had divine attacks, and he had 4 spells from druidism. In with them is his BSB. That's a big scary block. Behind that is his Fire Phoenix and a 3rd bolt thrower, and then off to the right he has 5 Ellian Reavers. Finishing off his deployment on the far right side, my opponent placed his 2nd commander on an eagle and another 5 Ellian Reavers. Starting on my right flank, I have a trusty Hobgoblin bolt thrower. Bravely guarding it is my Hobgoblin Khan that I've named Genghis. Now I know most players use Hobgoblin characters on wolves as super cheap chaff, but don't be fooled, Genghis is a hunter. He's cheap enough that he can still be a chaff unit, but he has a knack for getting to war machines that no one else can get to. He has earned himself both paint and a name. Next to Genghis, we have my other named character, Grimble Blackhammer. He's riding his bull of Shamut and standing proudly upon the Pillar of Triumph, which I decorate with the shields of my defeated enemies. Grimble is carrying the Axe of Battle, the Hardened Shield, and the Talisman of Greater Shielding. So on the charge, he puts out 10 strength 5 attacks, plus an impact hit, and a stomp. I think his usefulness speaks for itself. Behind Grimble are 12 Citadel Guard with Flintlock axes and 20 unpainted Slave Orcs. Sorry, the Orcs haven't earned their paint yet. Here's a nice blurry shot of my Kadim Titan. He's hiding behind a building where only one of the Elvish bolt throwers can see him. And my left flank consists of a Titan Mortar, 30 Hobgoblins with bows and shields, and 20 more Orc slaves, white this time. Behind the slaves is my general and his elite bodyguard of Immortals. My general is more of a defensive build because his leadership is required to manage 3 of the units around him. But with 4 strength 6 attacks, he's no slouch in combat either. On the far left, I have 30 more Hobgoblins with bows and shields, and my 2nd Titan Mortar. Here's an overall shot of the board again. That big block of Lion Guard is what really scares me. I don't want to fight Lion Guard on the best of days, but with 2 characters in there, engaging that unit looks more like suicide. If it goes straight for my Immortals, I might be able to super smash it with the Immortals, the Titan, and Grimble, but with anything less than that, I think he'll do so much damage that he'll wreck whatever he touches before it even swings. Unfortunately, our secondary objective is capture the flags. The infidels have come to purge the land and have selected my small unit of Citadel Guard and both my Hobgoblin units as their targets. The Infernal Dwarves, being the faithful devots of Shamut that they are, need to stop their advance and maybe wreak a little vengeance in the process. The Highborn Elves only have 2 scoring units, so for the objective, I probably have to break both the Sea Guard and the Lion's Guard as well. This scenario is not working in my favor. And with that, the game begins. The Highborn Elves blow the clarion call of their trumpets across the battlefield, and the Ellion Reavers advance. Right behind them is his commander on an eagle. Now they've advanced just far enough that they are out of sight of Grimble, so he cannot charge them, unfortunately. But they still have some nice options for themselves next turn. And in the middle, everything advances as well. The Ellion Reavers move up, the Lion's Guard moves up, and the Fire Phoenix comes out from behind the hill so he can start picking his targets. On the far left side, I'm happy to say the Sea Guard did not advance. I'm not within range of them, so they can't shoot me, and I am perfectly okay with that. And here's a quick overall of the board after movement and magic. My opponent got 9 power dice and managed to get a toughness buff up on the Fire Phoenix, so it looks like I won't be shooting at him this turn. In the shooting phase, the Highborn Elves managed to get first blood by killing 1 orc slave. And then they put 2 wounds on a Hobgoblin bolt thrower, 1 wound on Genghis Khan, 3 wounds on the far left Titan mortar, which I don't have a picture of. All 3 of these are half dead, and the Sea Guard unit hasn't even fired yet. Thank goodness it was out of range. This phase sucked. So with no close combat to speak of, we move straight on into Infernal Dwarves turn 1. The Slave Orcs see the Ellion Reavers and think they're a match, so they declare the charge. The Ellion Reavers agree and flee. Genghis does what he was trained to do. He finds a nice sweet spot between that swamp and those ruins with an eye on the bolt thrower on the hill, setting himself up for a charge next turn. Grimble parks himself straight in front of those Ellion Reavers with a good view on the commander on an eagle, and he says, "Bring it." And the rest of my movement is a general advance. The Citadel Guard shuffle to the left a tiny bit to get ready for some incoming charges. The Slave Orcs who have already charged. And the Kadim Titan, I like to think of as possibly an avatar of Shamut. He comes out from behind the building. He sees lots of elves, and he's just there to help readjust their karma for them a little bit. The slaves advance, the hobgoblins advance, the immortals advance to the top of the hill where my overlord proudly declares, "The hill is mine and I am lord of all I can see." And of course the hobgoblins on the far, far left advance as well. I've lost faith with the Council of Magi, so we move into the shooting phase where the hobgoblin bolt thrower starts us off strong, putting 2 wounds on the Sea Guard bolt thrower. Fitting payback. Titan Mortar number 1 scores a direct hit on the Sea Guard and kills 5. More importantly, it applies the earthquake effect to that unit. Sorry for the blurry picture, the earthquake shell must have just gone off. Oops. And Titan Mortar number 2 gets a partial hit on the Lion Guard, which kills 1 Lion Guard, just enough to apply the earthquake effect. Hopefully that will slow them down so they won't be marching or charging next turn. Unless they want to take dangerous terrain, I am all good with that. And here's a quick shot of the board at the end of Infernal Dwarves turn 1. The Highborn Elves start turn 2 off with a charge, and their commander goes into my Hobgoblin bolt thrower. It's only got 1 wound left, so I have low expectations on this one. And for the rest of his movement, the Ellion Reavers in front of Grimble shuffle out of sight of him and turn to face poor Genghis, who's between that swamp and the ruin right in front of them. And the Ellion Reavers to the north rally and place themselves between Genghis and the bolt thrower he was about to charge. Elves to the north, elves to the south. It looks like Genghis might be in a bit of a pickle. And the Lion Guard advance. They don't march thanks to the earthquake effect. He didn't want to take the dangerous terrain, but it's now pretty clear he's going to try and get my first scoring unit of the Citadel Guard down to the south. And lastly, the Fire Phoenix flies out from cover and moves over to the top middle of the board, getting ready to burn some Hobgoblins alive. Here's an overall shot of the board at the end of movement of turn 2. I didn't take a picture of the magic phase, but my opponent has gotten 9 dice pretty consistently throughout the entire game, and will during the future turns. I didn't do a great job dispelling magic this turn, but the Lion Guard got a +2 toughness buff, and the Wizard with the Sea Guard managed to get down the fiery template of Doom. I believe it's called Enveloping Embers. He put that between the slaves and himself to hopefully slow their advance. In the shooting phase, all 3 bolt throwers line up on my Kadim Titan, and the power of Shamut can be felt on the tabletop. Those are his to-hit rolls. You know what they say? Better to be lucky than to be good. The Sea Guard do at least a little bit better. 5 poor Hobgoblins die from their bows. With shooting done, we move into combat, and the only combat we have is the brave Elvish commander who manages to slip the 1 wound off that Hobgoblin bolt thrower. Now my opponent thought long and hard. Should he stay where he is and stay at long range for my Citadel Guard, or should he try and overrun into their flank? He tried to overrun, but didn't quite make it, so he's in a tough spot. Here's an overall of the board at the end of Highborn Elves, turn 2. Turn 2 for the Infernal Dwarves, and the Slave Orcs start us off. They charge the Ellion Reavers in the flank, and the Ellion Reavers flee far, far away. That leaves the Orcs stranded a little bit in the middle of nowhere, but they opt not to try and redirect into the Lion Guard. If the Lion Guard want them, they can come and get them. The Ellion Reavers that fled stopped right in front of Grimble, which was very nice of them. Grimble charged them again and caught them right before the table edge. Go Grimble! And Genghis Khan charges into the Ellion Reavers. If he's going to get to that bolt thrower, it looks like he's got to go through them. I also charged the Hobgoblins into that Fire Phoenix. I know it's a bit of a risky move. The Hobgoblins are a scoring unit, but I have completely no faith in the Hobgoblins that they'll kill it, so hopefully they'll break on the right turn, and that will leave the Immortals free to charge that Fire Phoenix and mop up those points. The Citadel Guard advance into optimum firing range, and here's the middle of my army generally advancing. If you look carefully, you can see the edges of that Enveloping Embers template. Now, I don't know if the Highborn Elves were desperate or they actually thought this would stop my advance, but when my Overlord looks at Slave Orcs, the word expendable comes to mind. So he marches the Slave Orcs straight through it, and only 5 of them die. Well worth the price of admission to keep the pressure on those elves. The shooting phase was a bit mixed. Both Titan mortars missed, but at least neither of them misfired. Both Hobgoblins couldn't shoot, one marched and the other unit is in combat, so that just left the Citadel Guard. They got out their pointy guns and shot that eagle out of the sky. And in combat, Genghis is able to kill 2 Ellion Reavers on the charge. The Ellion Reavers do nothing back, but they do hold. Looks like they're going to have to grind each other out. And up north, the Hobgoblins do surprisingly well, or the Fire Phoenix does surprisingly poorly. The Phoenix only kills 2 Hobgoblins and only thunder stomps 1, while of course the Hobgoblins did nothing to the Phoenix. They wounded him, but the Phoenix made his save. With ranks and a charge, the Hobgoblins actually win combat by 1, but the Fire Phoenix sticks, and that's too bad because that was probably their only chance at glory. At the end of my turn, here's one last shot of the board before we go into Highborn Elf, turn 3. Ready to get in the battle, the Highborn Elf General and his Lion Guard charge those Orc slaves right in the flank. And they make that charge. Looks like they wanted those Orc slaves after all. The magic phase was a productive one. The Highborn Elf General got off Oaken Throne and managed to bring back all of the Illyrian Reavers. Great. Genghis Khan now has to fight a bunch of zombie elves. And in the shooting phase, Shamut makes his power known yet again. The Kadim Titan weathers 3 bolt thrower shots and a lot of arrows, but only takes 1 wound for all their trouble. In combat, and I'll quote someone who came before me, it was the worst parts of the Bible. That Lion Guard devastated the Orc unit. The BSB killed 3, I think the General killed 3, the Lion Guard killed another 8. Now the Orcs made a good showing for themselves with only 2 Orcs swinging. They managed to drag down 1 Lion Guard before they auto-broke and ran. And got run down. Those Citadel Guard might not be in the best position. And up north, the Fire Phoenix did a little better this time. He ate a few, stepped on a few, and this time it was the Hobgoblins' turn to lose by one. But under the stern eye of their Overlord, they held. Here's one last shot of the board before we move into Infernal Dwarves, turn 3. Tired of getting shot at, the Kadim Titan charges the Bolt Thrower. And because he was so far away, Grimble spends a turn moving up into extremely short range so he can charge that other Bolt Thrower next turn. The bravery of my Citadel Guard is great, but they are not going to be able to get away from the Lion Guard. They can't get out of line of sight, and if they try and run, they're probably going to get run down. Without a lot of good options, they stay put, and they're going to try and put as many bullets into that Lion Guard unit as they can. Here's an overall shot of the board after movement. In the shooting phase, both mortars target the Sea Guard unit, and they manage to kill 7 Sea Guard models. I have complete faith that the Kadim Titan is going to blow through that Bolt Thrower on the left and overrun into the Elves. Now, if there's one thing that Kadim Titan is great at, it is readjusting the karma on Elves. So he plans to send that entire unit up to a fiery heaven, but if the mortars can help stop them from being steadfast for even one turn, so much the better. In combat, Genghis Khan not only survives the attacks from the zombie elves, but actually kills 2 of them and breaks them. But he isn't able to catch them, and they stop right in front of that Bolt Thrower. He'll have to get him next turn. And up at the top of the screen, that Fire Phoenix is slowly chewing through that big block of Hobgoblins. The Hobgoblins refuse to break under the watchful eye of the Overlord, but they're pinning it in place, and I'm okay with that. Who knows, guys? Keep this up, and eventually, you might even earn yourself some paint. Here's an overall shot of the board, and with this, we move into Highborn Elves, turn 4. Fresh from his victory over the Orc slaves, the Highborn Elf General charges the Citadel Guard and makes it in with no problem. Of course, the Illyrian Reavers rally. In the magic phase, the Highborn Elf General summons the winds of magic and resurrects 5 of the Lion Guard that I've managed to kill so far. However, he miscast in the process and killed 5 of the Lion Guard that he just resurrected. A pretty good trade for me. In the shooting phase, the Bolt Thrower on the hill, sensing that danger is imminent, fires its last glorious salvo and, unfortunately, kills Genghis Khan and his wolf Lucky. In combat, it goes about as well as expected. The Lion Guard kill 11 of the Citadel Guard before they even swing, but just to show what defiance he could, the last model puts 1 wound on the BSB before he breaks and runs away. The Lion Guard want to get that first scoring unit, so they pursue and, unfortunately, run him off the table. Up at the top of the map, those Hobgoblins refuse to break from that Fire Phoenix. Their numbers are running pretty low, and they're not going to be steadfast for much longer, but those guys have done a hell of a job. And up at the top of the map, at the big fight, the Kadim does not disappoint, and he slaughters, I don't know, a lot of those spearmen. The spearmen cannot hold before the fury of the Kadim Titan, and they break, but they do get away. They've passed through the Bolt Thrower, who does not panic. Now, my opponent has not failed a single leadership test the entire game. I guess that's what you expect from Zealots. They're nothing if not determined. And here we are at the end of Highborn Elves, turn 4. I want to get that Sea Guard unit off the table before they can rally. So the Slave Orcs decide to declare a charge, and they push it a little closer to the table, but he didn't roll high enough to get off. My general and the Immortals, who haven't seen combat yet, shuffle around. Those Hobgoblins should be breaking sometime soon, and I want my Immortals ready to capitalize on it when they do. And the Kadim Titan looks for more elves to send to heaven and charges another Bolt Thrower. Now you see it, now you don't. And he kills the Bolt Thrower and overruns. The Hobgoblins hold for 1 more turn, showing what little metal they have, which is perfect. They should break on my opponent's turn, which should leave me a nice juicy flank for my Immortals to capitalize on. I didn't take a close-up picture of it, but as you can see in the top right corner, Grimble had charged that final Bolt Thrower and easily destroyed it, turning to face the, I'm sure, soon-to-be rallying Sea Guard. The Illyrian Reavers on the hill, they passed their panic check. I don't think they really cared about their friends. And as the turn ends, here's 1 more shot of those brave little Hobgoblins who have done a great job holding up that Fire Phoenix for almost the entire game. Turn 5, and the Highborn Elf General returns to the battlefield after mercilessly slaughtering my Citadel Guard. The Sea Guard in the top right corner rally, and the Illyrian Reavers get the heck out of dodge and run for the hills in the bottom right corner to try and preserve their points. The Fire Phoenix has a good round and finally breaks the Hobgoblin's steadfast. Not only did the Hobgoblins get away, but that leaves the Fire Phoenix in a perfect position to be charged by my Immortals on my next turn. This is a quick overview of the board as we head into Infernal Dwarves turn 5. Grimble charges forward to handle what remains of the Seaguard unit, and the Immortals charge forward to try their hand at taking on that Fire Phoenix. The Phoenix chooses discretion as the better part of valor and flees, but not fast enough and is caught by the Immortals. Grimble also makes his charge into the remaining Seaguard. Not to underestimate Elven shooting, they somehow manage to slip a second wound in through his armor. The game is starting to wind down now, so the Kadim Titan moves it more towards the center of the table. The Hobgoblins hold their place, hiding safely in the ruins, and off camera to the left, the Hobgoblins that fled from the Fire Phoenix rally on a 5 and thus preserve their points. In the shooting phase, the Hobgoblins in the ruins prove the adage, throw enough stuff against the wall and something's going to stick. 25 bow shots into the air, and you have 3 dead Illyrian Reavers. In the final combat of the game, Grimble is challenged to a duel which honor demands he must accept. The wizard is trampled mercilessly into the dirt, and so terrible is the carnage that the remaining Seaguard flee off the table. With only 1 unit left on the table, we call the game and don't bother with the final turn. The last unit has his general, his BSB, and an almost untouched unit of Lion Guards, so it's likely worth upwards of 1,000 points. But with the rest of his army destroyed, the back of his army's been broken. Neither of us was able to claim the objective, but in the end the infidels have been stopped, and it's a solid win for the Infernal Dwarves. Songs shall be sung, tales shall be told, and the Hall of Muttering shall remember. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, comments, or if there was something you'd like to see in a future video, please leave a comment below. I try and respond to all feedback within 24 hours. I'm trying to do my part to help grow our community. If you liked what you saw, I would appreciate a like on my video. And if you really like what you saw, subscribe to my channel, and you'll get a notification on your YouTube page when a future video is released. For more information about the 9th Age and to download a free copy of the rules, please visit www.the-9th-age.com. And for hobby advice, to learn more about why Infernal Dwarves are the coolest army in the game, or to hang around with some of the nicest folks on the internet, please visit my friends at www.chaos-dwarves.com. Peace out.